It was time for the NFL draft. Time for Arlo to save his family's farm back in Romania. Former teammates and close family were in attendance in New York for the draft, and Arlo had shot up draft boards after an award-filled and record-breaking career at FAU. After reaching 24 sacks in a season, Arlo was taken with the 4th overall pick for the Arizona Cardinals. Arlo was drafted as an outside linebacker, but was going to primarily come off the edge. In college, AK-47 did play some coverage snaps, and Arizona is hoping that with his 6'10 frame, he'll be able to disrupt some passing lanes. In practice and in the preseason, Karimova had opposing offenses' attention. He was getting double-teamed regularly coming off the edge, and with little help coming from his teammates along the defensive line, the Cardinals' pass rush hardly had an impact. The Cardinals ended up finishing last in the NFC West with a bottom-tier defense. The Niners and the Seahawks were fighting for the number 1 spot in the NFC West, and Karimova finished the season with only 1 sack. Some Cardinals fans were already starting to turn on the 6'10 4th overall pick. Following a disappointing rookie season with the Cards, the team had the 7th pick in the draft. With their pick, Arizona drafted a safety out of Auburn named Demarius Kirksey. Aside from Karimova, this was likely their best draft pick in years. Kirksey was immediately startable. In practice, Karimova showed progress as a run stopper at 6'10", and despite breaking the college sacks record, he had shown little progress as a pass rusher after logging just 1 sack in his first year. Yet again, the Romanian meat missile and the Cards began the season by playing the Niners, who were still the favorites of the NFC West. Kirksey's impact was immediately felt, though, whether it was playing sticky coverage or shutting down the running game. Kirksey was obviously already an impact player on defense. Karimova, on the other hand, was struggling to get to the passer after the ban of the Romanian meat missile launch, which of course was Karimova's signature move in college. After another sad excuse for a season, the Cardinals were able to draft another outside linebacker named Kyle Smith out of LSU. Overall, the team had a great draft on both sides of the ball, hopefully giving Kyler some more weapons. To start the year, Karimova and Smith were starting on opposite ends of each other against the Eagles, with Kirksey in the back playing coverage over the top. On top of the draft class, the Cardinals had a new head coach in Mike McDaniel. Now McDaniel will be able to play against his former mentor, Kyle Shanahan, twice a year. Arizona and Arlo were finally moving in the right direction. After finishing with an 8-9 record and just barely missing the playoffs, the Cardinals had a mid-first round pick and stocked up on D-line talent again, drafting Brandon Portis, another defensive lineman out of LSU. AK-47 had worked all offseason on increasing his athleticism. He knew he had the skill set to be an elite pass rusher, but he needed that extra burst to get to the passer. Karimova had already worked with players like Shaquem Griffin, Trey Hendrickson, and Ed Too Tall Jones. Arizona and Arlo easily beat the Packers in their first game, though. Midway through the season, Arlo still wasn't seeing results. Kirksey, his teammate, had 2 sacks at safety, which doubled Karimova's output. Finally, against the Lions, the increase in his athleticism and working on his pass rushing technique was beginning to pay off. Karimova made contact on the quarterback, but wasn't satisfied with that. With the Cardinals down late in the third, Karimova got a huge sack and forced a safety, putting up 2 points on the board while getting the ball back for Kyler in the offense. After that statement play, the offense drove down the field, scored a touchdown, and got the 2-point conversion to tie it at 17. The defense locked at the Lions, and eventually the Cardinals kicked a game-winning field goal with the clock expiring. The Cardinals franchise and Karimova did a complete 180 this season. AK-47 and the Cardinals won the NFC West and hosted the Niners in the wild card. With the Cardinals up 7-3 in the second quarter, the Niners tried to fool the Cards D with the play action, but Karimova beat the tackle on the outside for the sack on Purdy. The Niners offense was hard to stop with so many weapons, but Arlo and Co. held them to just 17 points. Unfortunately, Kyler could not put more than 2 scores on the board, and the Cardinals lost by 3 in Arizona. It was still a successful season, though, all things considered. The Cardinals had finished bottom 7 in the league for the first 2 years, then tied for the NFC West division win in the 3rd year before winning the NFC West outright in Arlo's 4th year. On top of that, Karimova made the Pro Bowl and finished 4th for the Best NFC Linebacker award behind Brian Burns, Rashawn Gary, and Joe Tryon. In the draft, the Cards had the 21st pick and took Dante Green, a safety out of Notre Dame. Aside from Green, the rest of the draft class was poor. Karimova still had no reason to question the Cardinals GM after the quick turnaround of the team, seemingly. To start the season, AK-47 played against the Jets, who had moved on from Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers finally, with their new starting quarterback being a guy named Rhett Bolden. After the Jets took a lead early, Karimova got in for a sack to kick off the season. After repeatedly getting stops against a talented Jets offense, the Cardinals again failed to score more than 14 points, and the Jets walked away with the opening day victory. One thing that Karimova loved, though, was that the Cards signed Trey Hendrickson to the roster, so now 2 FAU sack legends were playing on the same defense. This seemed to be used to placate the 6'10" Romanian because the team's performance was exceptionally pathetic after coming off an NFC West division win. Karimova had the best season of his career, finishing with 88 tackles, 11.5 sacks, and an interception. Mentor and fellow FAU alumni Hendrickson finished with the second most sacks on the team at 8.5. Karimova finished second for the NFC Best Linebacker Award to Brian Burns. Karimova continued to progress. He was now an elite power rusher and a serviceable run stopper and coverage backer. The Cardinals front office failed to put a winning team together again, as the team finished with a 2-15 record. The Niners, on the other hand, were playing in the Super Bowl 1 year after their wild card matchup with the Cardinals, although they did end up losing to the Jaguars. Karimova was shocked when the Cardinals drafted a quarterback with the first overall pick, taking Darren Thompson out of Kansas State. This draft class heavily focused on offense, and for good reason. The defense was still putting up elite numbers. With this draft class in tow, the Cards surely had to get better as a whole. But something shocking occurred. Stunningly, given all the talent at the quarterback position, the head coach decided to start an undrafted third-year quarterback, Zach Nance, over both Kyler Murray and the number 1 overall pick, Darren Thompson. Through 8 games, Zach Nance had 12 touchdowns to a whopping 19 interceptions. Karimova had 5.5 sacks, while Kyle Smith had just half a sack after being drafted to help with rushing the passer. After a complete season, Zach Nance had done his best Jameis Winston impression, trying to go 30 for 30. Nance had 29 TDs to 33 interceptions. Karimova, on the other hand, had a phenomenal season, wasted by ineptitude. He finished with 91 tackles, 9 sacks, and another interception. How often do you see 90 tackles out of a pass rusher? Truly unbelievable. Karimova won Best Linebacker in the NFC and, of course, made the Pro Bowl. The Cardinals finished with 1 win on the season. It would be fair to assume Karimova was sick of the Cardinals franchise. Karimova always felt that he was a loyal person. He didn't quit easy, but some mistakes were beyond stupidity. Some problems with the Cardinals were designed that way. The owner didn't want to spend, and that was reflected in the roster and the coaching staff. The roster was constructed primarily of first contract guys, and the coaching staff had gone down the toilet once Mike McDaniel left 1 year after missing the playoffs. Things were starting to turn around after the head coach was fired and Mike Vrabel was hired on. Vrabel had the respect of the players immediately as a former player with a history of team success. Karimova was bought in once again, and in the season opener delivered a memorable 90-yard fumble return for a touchdown against the Rams. The Cardinals would go on to beat their in-division opponent, but the team wouldn't show signs of life offensively, as Darren Thompson, the first overall pick from last year, finally stepped into the starting job for the first time and finished the season with an abysmal 17 touchdowns to 20 interceptions. The life had been sucked from Karimova's performance on the field, as he finished with his worst year since his rookie season. The Cardinals had just 4 wins on the season again. Karimova had 3 years left on his deal and was considering what his options would be after those years were up. He was thinking of moving on after free agency, but then came the draft. The Cardinals had the first overall pick for the second time in 3 years. With their pick, they drafted another quarterback, Artie Ross out of BYU. Karimova was shocked. He was at home with his family, and he didn't celebrate at all after the pick. Ross was a generational athlete, but nothing more. He was perhaps the biggest reach with the number 1 overall pick ever. He would likely be a bust, much like Jamarcus Russell. Karimova was finally sick of the Cardinals. He called the GM after the draft and demanded a trade. Apparently, Kirksey had called right after and demanded a trade as well, along with a few other teammates. Finally, after much coverage by ESPN, the Pro Bowl pair of Arlo Karimova and Demarius Kirksey were off to New York to play for the Jets, and that is where we will leave you for now.